This play is sponsored by the California Civil Liberties Public Education Program, a state-funded grant project of the California State Library.
LA Theater Works presents the Alliance Theater production of Native Guard by Natasha Trethewey, directed for radio by Rosalind Ayres. Starring January LaVoy as the poet and Thomas Neal Antoine Ghant as the Native Guard, featuring Nicole Banks-Long on vocals and Tyrone Jackson on piano. Based on Natasha Trethewey's collection of poems, Native Guard is both an elegy to her mother and a journey into Mississippi's Civil War history. In poetry and song, she reflects on her mother's passing while contemplating the former slaves who became soldiers in a regiment known as the Native Guard. Trethewey's work was the winner of the 2007 Pulitzer Prize in Poetry. And now, Native Guard, conceived and originally produced by the Alliance Theater, Atlanta, Georgia, and directed by Susan V. Booth, Artistic Director. Produced with the generous support of the Poetry Foundation.
For my mother, in memory. An epigraph from Charles Wright. Memory is a cemetery I've visited once or twice. White, ubiquitous, and the set aside everywhere underfoot. Theories of time and space. You can get there from here, though there's no going home. Everywhere you go will be somewhere you've never been. Try this. Head south on Mississippi 49, 1 by 1 mile markers ticking off another minute of your life. Follow this to its natural conclusion, dead end at the coast, the pier at Gulfport, where riggings of shrimp boats are loose stitches in a sky threatening rain. Cross over the man-made beach, 26 miles of sand dumped on the mangrove swamp, buried terrain of the past. Bring only what you must carry. Tome of memory. Its random blank pages. On the dock where you board the boat for Ship Island, someone will take your picture. The photograph, who you were, will be waiting when you return.
I am a poet, wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world of woe. There is no sickness, no toils, no danger in that bright world to which I go. I'm going there to meet my mother. She said she'd meet me when I come. I'll only go over Jordan. I'll only go over home.
The Southern Crescent. 1. In 1959, my mother is boarding a train. She is barely 16, her one large grip bulging with homemade dresses, whisper of crinoline and lace, her name stitched inside each one. She is leaving behind the dirt roads of Mississippi, the film of red dust around her ankles, the thin whistle of wind through the floorboards of the shotgun house, the very idea of home. Ahead of her, days of travel, one town after the next, and California, a word she can't stop repeating. Over and over, she will practice meeting her father. Imagine how he must look, how different now from the one photo she has of him. She will look at it once more, pulling into the station at Los Angeles, and then again and again on the platform. No one like him in sight. 2. The year the Old Crescent makes its last run, my mother insists we ride it together. We leave Gulfport late morning, heading east. Years before, we rode together to meet another man, my father, waiting for us as our train derailed. I don't recall how she must have held me, how her face sank as she realized again the uncertainty of it all. That trip, too, gone wrong. Today, she is sure we can leave home, bound only for whatever awaits us. The sun now setting behind us, the rails humming like anticipation, the train pulling us toward the end of another day. I watch each small town pass before my window until the light goes and the reflection of my mother's face appears, clearer now, as evening comes on, dark and certain.
Fair daffodils, we weep to see you haste away so soon.
Genus Narcissus. The road I walked home from school was dense with trees and shadow, creekside, and lit by yellow daffodils, early blossoms bright against winter's last gray days. I must have known they grew wild, thought no harm in taking them. So I did, gathering up as many as I could hold, then presenting them in a jar to my mother. She put them on the sill, and I sat nearby, watching light bend through the glass, day easing into evening, proud of myself for giving my mother some small thing. Childish vanity. I must have seen in them some measure of myself. The slender stems, each blossom ahead lifted up toward praise or bowed to meet its reflection. Walking home those years ago, I knew nothing of Narcissus or the daffodils' short spring, how they'd dry like graveside flowers, rustling when the wind blew, a whisper treacherous from the sill. "Be taken with yourself," they said to me. "Die early," to my mother. Graveyard blues. It rained the whole time we were laying her down, rained from church to grave when we put her down. The suck of mud at our feet was a hollow sound. When the preacher called out, I held up my hand. When he called for a witness, I raised my hand. Death stops the body's work, the soul's a journeyman. The sun came out when I turned to walk away, glared down on me as I turned and walked away, my back to my mother, leaving her where she lay. The road going home was pocked with holes. That home-going road's always full of holes. Though we slow down, time's wheel still rolls. I wander now among names of the dead. My mother's name, stone pillow for my head. What the body can say. Even in stone, the gesture is unmistakable. The man upright, though on his knees, spine arched, head flung back, and, covering his eyes, his fingers spread across his face. I think, grief. And since he's here in the courtyard of the divinity school, what he might ask of God. How easy it is to read this body's language, or those gestures we've come to know. The raised thumb that is both a symbol of agreement and the request for a ride. The two fingers held up that once meant victory, then peace. But what was my mother saying that day not long before her death? Her face tilted up at me, her mouth falling open, wordless, just as we open our mouths in church to take in the wafer, meaning communion. What matters is context. The side of the road, or that my mother wanted something I still can't name. What, kneeling, my face behind my hands, I might ask of God. Photograph. Ice Storm, 1971. Why the rough edge of beauty? Why the tired face of a woman suffering made luminous by the camera's eye? Or the storm that drives us inside for days, power lines down, food rotting in the refrigerator, while outside the landscape glistens beneath a glaze of ice. Why remember anything but the wonder of those few days, the iced trees, each leaf in its glassy case? The picture we took that first morning, the front yard, a beautiful, strange place. Why on the back has someone made a list of our names, the date, the event? Nothing of what's inside. Mother, stepfather's fist. What is evidence? Not the fleeting bruises she'd cover with makeup, a dark patch as if imprint of a scope she'd pressed her eye too close to, looking for a way out. Nor the quiver in the voice she'd steady, leaning into a pot of bones on the stove. Not the teeth she wore in place of her own, or the official document, its seal and smeared signature fading already, the edges wearing. Not the tiny marker, with its dates, her name, abstract as history. Only the landscape of her body, splintered clavicle, pierced temporal, her thin bones settling a bit each day, the way all things do. Letter. At the post office, I dash a note to a friend. Tell her I've just moved in, gotten settled, that I'm now rushing off on an errand, except that I write errant, a slip between letters, each with an upright backbone anchoring it to the page. One has with it the fullness of possibility, a shape almost like the O my friend's mouth will make when she sees my letter in her box. The other, a mark that crosses, like the flat line of your death, the symbol over the church house door. The ashes on your forehead, some Wednesday I barely remember. What was I saying? I had to cross the word out, start again, explain what I know best because of the way you left me. How suddenly a simple errand, a letter, everything can go wrong. After your death. First, I emptied the closets of your clothes, threw out the bowl of fruit, bruised from your touch, left empty the jars you bought for preserves. The next morning, birds rustled the fruit trees, and later, when I twisted a ripe fig loose from its stem, I found it half-eaten, the other side already rotting, or, like another I plucked and split open, being taken from the inside, a swarm of insects hollowing it. I'm too late. Again. Another space emptied by loss. Tomorrow, the bowl I have yet to fill. Myth. I was asleep while you were dying. It's as if you slipped through some rift, a hollow I make between my slumber and my waking, the Erebus I keep you in, still trying not to let go. You'll be dead again tomorrow, but in dreams you live. So I tried taking you back into morning. Sleep heavy, turning, my eyes open, I find you do not follow. Again and again, this constant forsaking. Again and again, this constant forsaking. My eyes open, I find you do not follow. You back into morning, sleep heavy, turning. But in dreams you live. So I try taking, not to let go. You'll be dead again tomorrow. The Erebus I keep you in, still, trying, I make between my slumber and my waking. It's as if you slipped through some rift, a hollow. I was asleep while you were dying. At dusk. At first, I think she is calling a child. My neighbor, leaning through her doorway at dusk, street lamps just starting to hum the backdrop of evening. Then I hear the high-pitched wheedling we send out to animals who know only sound, not the meanings of our words. Here, here, nor how they sometimes fall short. In another yard, beyond my neighbor's sight, the cat lifts her ears, turns first toward the voice, then back to the constellation of fireflies flickering near her head. It's as if she can't decide whether to leap over the low hedge, the neat row of flowers, and bound onto the porch into the steady circle of light, or stay where she is. Luminous possibility, all that would keep her away from home, flitting before her. I listen as my neighbor's voice trails off. She's given up calling for now, left me to imagine her inside the house waiting, perhaps in a chair in front of the TV or walking around doing small tasks. Left me to wonder that I too might lift my voice, sure of someone out there. Send it over the lines, stitching here to there. Certain the sounds I make are enough to call someone home.
Alabama's gotten me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn! Alabama's gotten me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest, and everybody knows about Mississippi. God damn! Can you see it? Can you feel it? It's all in the air. I can't stand the pressure much longer. Somebody say a prayer. Alabama's gotten me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest, and everybody knows about Mississippi. God damn! And everybody knows about Mississippi. God damn.
Pilgrimage, Vicksburg, Mississippi. Here, the Mississippi carved its mud-dark path, a graveyard for skeletons of sunken riverboats. Here, the river changed its course, turning away from the city as one turns, forgetting, from the past. The abandoned bluffs, land sloping up above the river's bend, where now the Yazoo fills the Mississippi's empty bed. Here, the dead stand up in stone, white marble on Confederate Avenue. I stand on ground once hollowed by a web of caves. They must have seemed like catacombs in 1863 to the woman sitting in her parlor, candlelit, underground. I can see her, listening to shells explode, writing herself into history, asking what is to become of all the living things in this place. This whole city is a grave. Every spring, pilgrimage, the living come to mingle with the dead, brush against their cold shoulders in the long hallways, listen all night to their silence and indifference, relive their dying on the green battlefield. At the museum, we marvel at their clothes, preserved under glass, so much smaller than our own, as if those who wore them were only children. We sleep in their beds, the old mansions hunkered on the bluffs, draped in flowers, funereal, a blur of petals against the river's gray. The brochure in my room calls this living history. The brass plate on the door reads, Prissy's room. A window frames the river's crawl toward the Gulf. In my dream, the ghost of history lies down beside me, rolls over, pins me beneath a heavy arm.
This is the Alliance Theatre production of Native Guard by Natasha Trethewey. Our story continues next time. I'm Susan Loewenberg, producing director of LA Theatre Works.